Hey, Tony Kegger here, doing a book review of Chris Jericho's new book, The Best in the World at What I Have No Idea. This is his third book. His first book was Lion's Tale. Second book was Undisputed. I took some notes down to talk about this book. Keep a quick review, just no spoilers, just my review. Let me go over what's discussed in the topics that are in this book. It's a nice little mix of wrestling stories and non-wrestling stories. So here's the wrestling stuff. Starts with the 2007 return. Goes over that briefly. Doesn't spend a lot of time talking about 2007, which is fine with me because I wasn't watching WWE in 2007, so I'm glad that he went over that really quickly. He feuded Orton in 2007. I guess he feuded a little bit with JBL at the end of the year, but he kept it really quick. Not much about 2007. So then, here's what else he talks about. He talks about a lot of stuff on WrestleMania 25 with Mickey Rourke, his feud with Mickey Rourke, and his feud with the legends like Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat and Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka. So I think he got a whole chapter in just WrestleMania 25. So good stuff there. He talks about his feud with Edge around 2010, WrestleMania 26. Talks about when he was his tag team with Big Show, Jericho. So good topic there. Talks about goes over his two matches with CM Punk in 2012. Goes over his trilogy and match with Rey Mysterio. His epic 2008 feud with Shawn Michaels. His interaction with Bob Barker during the famous Price is Raw show I attended. This is what I forgot. He brings up NXT because he was a pro in the first season of NXT. His rookie was Wade Barrett, and Wade Barrett ended up winning NXT that season. So good stuff there. Talking about behind the scenes of NXT and stuff like that. Talks about when WWE was overseas in Europe and there was a volcano in Iceland that prevented them from traveling. And the Raw roster was stuck in Ireland because they banned flights in the UK. And this whole story about how Jericho and the rest of the SmackDown crew had to drive to Madrid, Spain, or somewhere in Spain, I think, in order to get to Raw in time. So a good story about that. And then it talks about his when he returned to WWE in 2012 with the whole the end of the world as you know it vignettes. And it also talks about the time when he was at a house show in Brazil and he kicked the Brazil flag, and talks about what really happened afterwards, the fallback from that. So really interesting WWE topics, wrestling topics. And I forgot to mention Vince McMahon is a big character in this book. For some reason Vince McMahon keeps showing up in this book a lot of cool Vince McMahon stories. So that was really fun to read. And the non-wrestling stuff in this book. Talks about Dancing with the Stars. Talks about making MacGruber. I forgot about that. He made a movie with Will Forte and Kristen Wiig. A movie called MacGruber, and I didn't think about that when I was thinking of topics he would discuss in his book. And so I'm glad he mentioned that in his book. Talks about how he got the part of MacGruber and how it went when he was filming it and everything. And he talks about his he was hosting a game show called Downfall. I remember it only aired for 6 episodes, but he talks about how he got that job. He has a few stories about Fozzy, not as many as I thought he would, but he talks about Fozzy a little bit. Fozzy is his band. Talks about when he was hosting the Golden Gods Awards. I think he hosted it a couple times. He talks about how he got that job, and he also talks briefly, maybe a couple pages about his web series called "But I'm Chris Jericho." It was I think it's on YouTube. I don't know how many episodes they aired, but it was a really good web series. Each episode was about maybe 8 minutes long. So he does talk. It's kind of recent. He just made them a couple years ago, so he does talk about that a little bit towards the end of the book. So that's some really interesting non-wrestling stories. So You know, of course, the wrestling stories are very good to read because it's a wrestling book, but he's got a lot of non-wrestling stuff here, and a lot of just random stories in this book that are just nothing to do with wrestling or his band Fozzy. He'll just tell a story. It's like really funny. Like he's got some good stories. And some other things I noticed. First of all, like not a lot of stories about his family in this book. I mean, he'll mention his family, but doesn't really tell many stories about them, which is kind of disappointing because most wrestling books, I wouldn't care about that kind of stuff. I would just skip to the wrestling stuff. But like Chris Jericho's books and maybe like Mick Foley's books, those are two guys who every chapter in their books are so entertaining that I would actually want to read that stuff about his family and like some stories about his son and he's got 2 daughters, and I didn't even know he had 2 daughters. I think they're twins. But he more family stories would have been interesting. Mick Foley does a lot of that stuff in his books. They're taking notes in his book is you'll be using YouTube a lot. A lot of times I'll read a chapter and I'll be going on YouTube and looking up what he said. So expect to be using YouTube a lot if you have this book. And a lot of times something Chris Jericho would write and like no way, like that didn't happen. I don't remember it happening that way, and I watched the video and Jericho's right exactly how it happened. So I'm seeing new things that I didn't notice before. I don't remember because of what Jericho wrote. So some good stuff. You'll definitely be checking out YouTube a couple times when you read this book, probably more than that even. Now, here's another thing I want to mention. Okay, this book is not perfect. Like grammatically, it's a good book. It's perfect. Like I didn't see any spelling errors. No, like every sentence was perfectly fine. Like obviously somebody proofread this and double checked it, and it was, grammatically it was perfect. But factually, I saw some errors, 4 errors actually, and I'm surprised like they got missed. Like they should have what Jericho should have done. Should have emailed me, sent me a PDF file of the book, tell me to read it over for him, and I would just email him back any mistakes I noticed. But he didn't do that, so the mistakes ended up in the book. And I'll give you an example of one that mistakes, because I don't know if it's even a mistake. He might have done this on purpose. But he talks about when he won the World Heavyweight Championship in a scramble match against Batista. It was at Unforgiven. And after he talks about he won the match, became the new champion, but he keeps referring to himself as the WWE champion, and like he did one. I thought he made a mistake, but he kept saying I was the WWE champion, I was the WWE champion. And he wasn't the WWE champion. He was the World Heavyweight champion, and not once did he call himself the World Heavyweight champion. And he was saying how I am finally back at the top of the world, the number 1 guy. I forget who the WWE champion was back then. Maybe it was Randy Orton or John Cena, I don't know. But it wasn't Chris Jericho. So, but he might have did that on purpose. Because really, the World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE Championship are almost interchangeable. It's not like he won an Intercontinental Championship and said that he's WWE champion. So maybe he's thinking they won't know the difference. I'll just say I was WWE champion even though I really was World Heavyweight champion. I don't know. It wasn't a big error. It's I kind of didn't think about it too much. But then he made 3 more errors that were obviously errors, and he didn't do this on purpose because none of these errors were even about him. He was referring to other people, and there were errors I mean, I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but he got the wrong year once, and what was your he named the wrong wrestler, or he named the wrong situation. These were obviously errors, and these weren't subjective anyway. They're clearly I know the correct thing he should have wrote, and he didn't write that. So I don't know. If it was 1 error, it's one thing, but I counted 4 errors. That's big. Next time, Chris Jericho, if you're watching this, send me an advanced copy of your book. I'll proofread it for you. I'll let you know if there's any errors. I mean, he might have had some other errors, like music errors. I didn't notice that, but the wrestling errors, there's 4 of them, and maybe a lot of people didn't notice it, but I noticed them. I noticed them right away. So yeah, if you're watching this video, read the book, see if you can find the 4 errors. I already told you the first error. He referred himself to the WWE champion when really he was the World Heavyweight champion. But see if you can find the other 3 errors. And if you do, leave in the comments. And let's see what else I want to write about this. Say about this. Last thing I want to say is that it's a good book. I enjoyed it. I'm not gonna say it's like the best book Jericho's ever wrote, but I'm not gonna say it's worse than the first two. Because I see like his three books is like one giant book, and this is like the dirt part of it, his like of a giant book. Because like I like all three books. I mean, all three books had something I liked. I was interested in. The first book talked about his international career when he was wrestling in Germany and Japan and Mexico. That stuff was very entertaining. And when he was wrestling in ECW and WCW, great stuff there. Second book, all about the Attitude Era. You know, great stuff there. Talks in his first few years in WWE. Talks about what happened when Chris Benoit died and what happened, you know, where he was at when he found the news. So interesting stuff there. I always like reading about the Chris Benoit stuff. Any new information about that, it's always something I want to read. And his third book, it's like great. 2008 to 2013 is like the very years I like in WWE because I was watching WWE in Attitude Era, took about 5 years off and started watching in 2008. I haven't stopped since. So he covers everything from those years, from 2008 to 2013. So all that stuff I remember like clearly because it just happened. So it was great to like learn the backstory of that stuff. And yeah, one more thing about if you listen to Jericho's podcast, some of these stories will be familiar because he does some stuff he's talked about in his podcast or in his book. But this is better because you know, most of the stories he's already said before in the podcast, he talks about more in more detail in the book. So even though, and these are all good stories anyway, so you want to read them anyway. So yeah, it's kind of like some of these stories you might have heard before, but it's still good to read them again because sometimes he like gives you the extended cut of a story he's already told. But yeah, good book, the best in the world. I wouldn't say it's his best book, but again, I wouldn't say it's his worst book because like I can't really say which one's better because like I like them all. There's stuff I like about the first book. I wouldn't want to rank them. They're all good, and so if you like the first two books, I think you'll like this one too. Glad I bought it because I'm sure I'm gonna be reading this book a lot of times. So like I like owning these books because a lot of times I'll just go back and read them again. Not the whole book, but there's like certain chapters I'll probably read again. And so this was very good. This was as good as I was expecting. Not disappointed at all. I'm hoping he writes a fourth book. Because he'll probably in his fourth book he'll talk about like his feud with Fandango and I don't know what else happened there. Like his third match with CM Punk and you know, so I'm sure he's a lot of good topics ready for book 4. And I can't wait to read that. So thanks for watching. See you later.